can you do actions like hold files in case I want to join a result of a data set against another? So I'm presuming that once you do your data prep, you want to store the results of the data prep on a hold file. AJ, do you want to take that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Melvin. You can do that, and in fact, it will be much easier to do that into a flow. So as I showed you in the flow, you can bring in a data set, or you can bring in the result from a whole file, and you probably need to make sure that there are common join entities between those two. But absolutely, you can do that in the flow quite easily.
Hey, real quick, and we can take follow-up questions on that as well, but I want to make sure before because I know a lot of people have to go for other things. We do, as Dinesh mentioned at the beginning, there is an exit survey. Please fill that out. We want to make sure that we're doing these. We'll continue to do these. I think we're doing these every other month. That we're doing things that are contextual to you guys and things that make a difference for you. So please give us ideals that things that you would like to see, areas that maybe you guys are working on that mean something to you. So please do that. And again, we also have an offer, I think, for a coffee and an interview with one of the panelists. So fill it out. So sorry, I want to get that in before everybody left. Go ahead and continue on with the questions.
Yep, thank you, Tim. So again, just to add to AJ's answer on that, again, the philosophical question of do you want to incrementally add data to your hold files? I think that's another discussion. But I'd say that once you have your data prep done, if you want to store it in a hold file and use that for your report build, for your application build, that's certainly doable. But if you want to have your entire enterprise data and you want to use hold file, I think that's another discussion. Continuation to Melvin, he's asking if we can schedule. Can we set up scheduling recipient dynamic or by a variable? So I'm assuming, AJ, he's talking about the part where after your data prep, you scheduled it for receipt by email.
Yeah, and I didn't really get when you say the recipient dynamic or by a variable. What do you mean by a variable? If you can explain that a little bit.
So we'll give him a chance to, I don't know if we can Tim, can you have Melvin have mic access?
Yeah, I can.
If not, I'll take an educated guess at what he means. I'll try to answer the question.
I've made it to where he can talk if he wants to. If not, we can try to make a guess.
Yeah. Melvin, you're on. If you're not able to talk, so basically, if you're talking about bursting, if you're talking about using a variable to say, okay, this portion of the data set will be received by a certain section of the audience based on a certain variable, you can certainly do that. What AJ was doing, go ahead. No, you're on.
Right. Sorry. Yes, Dinesh, that's exactly what I meant. As in, like, we actually only want to send our data like based in images or whatever that we like to send to a certain group of people within an organizations. Like we actually have a tool. We actually have a tool available to different organizations. So we just want to send to select people within that organization. So we and that too can be dynamic. And if at all we want to give that option to users so that they can choose who they wanted to do it. Right, so we don't want to hard code it. We want to make it more dynamic. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, more dynamic, more GUI based. Absolutely. So if you're familiar with the report caster interface, these are things that you can do, very very easily, almost to the point where you're just sending a calendar invite. Now you can take a data set and say, okay, based on this parameter, you can even do an operational condition. If the values are less than 100, then I want to send it to this group. If the values are more than 100, I want to send it to another group. So all of those operational conditions, dynamic bursting, variable-based bursting, all of that is possible. Now, the only question is if you are trying to tie that back to AJ's data prep. Now I prepared the data. Now this particular data prep, can I send it to them? The answer is still yes.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, we love the fact that IBI has remained a very parameter-driven application where most anything can be parameterized. So that's always been helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I would say these are probably two different aspects of, the different ways in which you can schedule within the caster. One was in the flow, and one was we talked about the the bursting capabilities. There are lots of pre-processing things that you can do before you start bursting it out. So some of the things that Dinesh mentioned, you can do conditional, you can do dynamic list. There are lots of things that you can do. Now, one thing you're saying that you want the user to choose that whether they want, by let's say a condition or not. That is something which you can. There are multiple ways in which you can embed that logic within the portal as well. That once they go there, they want to pick and choose. Okay, I want to run it myself, or I want it to schedule. So absolutely, those all our options are available in the focus.
Perfect.
Okay.
We answered the question on the
then
version.
There's another question from Aziz.
Yeah.
Hello, is this capability in WebFocus 8207? Is there a licensing cost to do this? AJ, I think he's talking about your entire data prep exercise.
Is that? So I would say absolutely. 8207, everything that I showed is all available in 8207. And the classification and capability that I talked about, it's only available in the latest release, like the most latest build that we have. Apart from that, everything that we have is probably already available out there in 8207.
So there was another question at the end. Can you incorporate user-defined functions in a common script such as RPython? And there is, from my understanding, and AJ, I know both you and Dinesh probably answer this much more detailed. Yes, you can incorporate R, and Python's become the more common one, but definitely R is still out there, where you can, if you're talking about ingesting modeling type of scripts and that type of stuff into it, the answer is yes. Now, what it takes to do that, I'm not the right person to answer that.
Just to add on, I'd say that. Hey, go ahead, AJ. I'll answer after you.
No, I was just saying that the way in which you deploy R or Python is pretty much similar, right? So you can type directly to the notebook. If you're using the notebook for Python, you can take that .py file and you can have the WebFocus to pick up that file, and you can embed the links to the data sources. So when you use the Python adapter, there's a Python adapter in WebFocus, and when you go to the connect mode, and you can point to that Python file and say that whenever I use that Python file, I want to run it against these data sources. So again, no coding involved, just pick and choose menu based, and you can easily run R and Python custom models in WebFocus.
Yeah, the newer versions, AJ, right? Don't they even include a Python server with the actual as part of the installation or something? I know there's, I apologize for wrong, but I think there is some integration with Python into the actual platform itself. Yeah.
So it installs Python automatically.
Mm-hmm.
I will also say that the user-defined functions, the more commonly used ones, be it standard deviation, deviation from your mean, your R squared, things like that are available from a menu-based function like AJ was talking about. So you'll see more and more of that you don't have to code on your own, that you don't have to write a separate script. But if that's the direction you want to go in, depends on the model you want to deploy, depends on the linear regression type equations that you want to put in. The more complex it is, the more you might have to do on your own. But I think IBI and TIBCO, they've been better and better at incorporating this commonly used functions in a GUI-based fashion.
Yeah, and a lot of, I would say, supervised and unsupervised, both types of models. We have been trying to standardize that and put that as part of the menu-based options for the users. But again, as Dinesh said, if you want to get into more complex scenarios and custom Python models, that's also available.
Yep. There's a couple questions from Andrew Wright. One of these kind of goes hand in hand with this. We can start with that one first. Do you have experience running AI or ML against? Hold on, I'm missing part of it. Against unstructured data, for example, natural language, NLP. I don't personally, but Dinesh, I know our team does, and I'm sure IBI TIBCO does as well. I do know that is part of the platform. I can't speak to especially the unstructured part of that, but absolutely. Dinesh, you're on mute.
Yeah, we have run some AI and ML models against unstructured data, more recently with a healthcare client of ours. And again, depends on the models themselves. But even with if you're talking about WebFocus, the WebFocus is getting much better with unstructured data. and understanding unstructured data, providing data platforms for storage, to providing data platforms to incorporate user-defined functions, custom functions, things like that. So the broad answer is yes. But if you have a specific, function in mind, specific user-defined operation in mind, then we'll have to take it with that, Andrew. So if you have a use case that you want to discuss with us, we'll after this webinar, you can send out a note and we'll find time for you.
AJ, did you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, as Denise said, the answer is yes, absolutely, you can do that. In fact, there are within WebFocus platform, we have some embed capabilities that allows you to interpret the data that's already there for you and do natural language processing against it. But if you're talking about any custom and complex scenarios, absolutely, you can bring in those models as well for natural language processing.
Perfect. And the other question we kind of jumped over for that was also from Andrew. Thinking of end-to-end, the end-to-end slide that was shown earlier, thoughts of presenting unwanted or counterintuitive finding to execs. I think that was your slide, AJ, the end-to-end. I'm trying to remember if I had one that.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on presenting unwanted or counterintuitive finding to execs?
I think he's talking about the theme, which is, do you want to show data where people can be fooled?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. And if you're asking, and that goes the same conversation. Do you want to show outliers? Do you want to show, things that aren't just part of the, the overall trend of things, to show those type of things that, I would say unwanted or counterintuitive, I think to me would, depending on what you're looking at, may fall into those categories. It all depends on what you're trying to show. Every time you're showing a visualization and starting from the data side of things, you're trying to tell a story with it. So when you look at what your story is, do you want it to show the things that are unwanted? Are you trying to show things in the data that don't fit? Or are you trying to show things that maybe part of the trend that is counterintuitive to the trend you're wanting to show? Or you're trying to tell just a generalized story of trends in the data or what's happening in the data, and you don't want those outliers, those things to kind of take away from that. It really depends on what you're trying to show, in my opinion. And I hope, Andrew, I'm getting the nature of what your question is correctly. But that would be my answer to that. It just depends on what you're trying to show and the story you want to show to them. Sometimes outliers are exactly what you're looking for, the things that are not not the norm within the data.
Yeah, and I agree in that. It all depends on the use case that we're trying to solve, right? So if it's probably a machine learning model, you probably don't want to have outliers in place at that time. That would really push the model to an extent. And if you're looking at some other use case, looking at best products, probably you might want to include the outliers. So it really depends on the use case that you are trying to present to the executives.
Perfect. And Andrew, I hope we answered your question. If not, I did make it to where you could talk. If we did, then that's awesome. Even better.
Yeah, you guys did great, and I thank you for addressing the tough question.
Perfect. Did I miss any questions? I think we've made it through all the questions that I saw, at least. Perfect. Well, I appreciate it. I know we went a little bit over, which we typically do with questions, Q&A. But I appreciate everybody showing up. Again, this is an important topic to us. We definitely want to hear other topics that are valuable to you guys, that we can continue to have this dialogue on. To me, this is, again, it's just an open dialogue between us and you guys, and trying to really help you guys along in your journey and what you're doing from the data management side of things all the way through the analytics side. So please let us know. And again, appreciate everybody's time for jumping on, and hope everybody has a great rest of the day.